I only found out that I was introducing some Italian guy this morning. And I don't know, this Italian guy, I first heard him actually on Tone's podcast, and I was like, this accent, I can't get it out of my head. And it's funny, it's so pervasive that even when I read Twitter tweets from this guy, I read them in an Italian accent. And so, from what I understand, his talk, where's the topic of the talk? It was supposed to be something, but apparently it's been changed to Bitcoin cultures. And this actually apparently stems from a podcast that he and I did. In fact, Giacomo wrote a piece. If you haven't noticed yet, his name is Giacomo, this Italian guy. Say what? Spoiler. The spoiler alert, yeah, apologies. He actually wrote a piece for the Bitcoin Times, which is a publication that I do once a year. And his piece was called Bitcoin and the Hop Cycle. So if you don't know the name, you probably know the sequence, which is strong men create good times create weak men create bad times create strong men. So he wrote an incredible little piece for that article, and for that publication. And we followed that up with a podcast in which we just had this discussion, as weird people do, and we recorded ourselves and we put it live, and in there we explored the nature of the kind of person who seems to gravitate towards Bitcoin and actually understands Bitcoin. Because you've got people who are like, I'm a Bitcoiner, but buy my shitcoin. You've got these Bitcoiners from Silicon Valley who, believe that Soylent is like the path to, health, and in the process grow fucking man boobs. You've got these other ones who are like, libertarians who believe in freedom and shit, and they believe in the freedom to scam you out of your Bitcoin. So you have all like these different camps of people that come into Bitcoin, and most of them, if they're kind of too squarely in one camp, they're completely fucking retarded. And we were trying to figure out like where the Venn diagram is of people who actually become Bitcoiners. And my assumption is that a lot of you in here kind of fit in that Venn diagram. I'm sure there's a few retards here as well, but we will cleanse you of your retardedness. So anyway, without further ado, I am going to bring up this Italian guy who I'm very skeptical of, but apparently he's a good speaker. And he's going to tell you more about Bitcoin cultures.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't have such a strong accent. It's okay. It's normal. Okay. So Alex just reminded you about the origin of this talk, of this discussion that was in this podcast with him. After this discussion with him, a guy on Twitter created a Venn diagram trying to follow up our discussion about intersecting, overlapping Bitcoin cultures. And then I made a promise to Odonaut, and I told the guy, I will write an article about this topic for Citadel 21. And I will, but that was 4 years ago. So sorry. I still haven't written the article, but there is a presentation at least. So maybe Citadel 21, you could just link to the video of the presentation, and I'm done. Okay. So let's start with the idea of multidisciplinarity of Bitcoin. So in order to really understand Bitcoin, in order to really get Bitcoin, you need to understand a few different things. It's not enough to understand just one. If you don't understand at least at a very high level the others, it's likely that you will miss some of the characteristics of the features and of the value of Bitcoin. So, of course, you need engineers to understand Bitcoin. Even if you are somebody coming from a non-technical field, over the last months of years or any amount of time after you started to fall in the rabbit hole, you started to learn good engineering. Security practices, open source code, the importance of understanding. Even if you hear people talking about hardware wallets, you may not understand a thing about the electronics of a secure element. But you have to start to at least understand to distinguish between people who are just bullshitting and people who are making sense. So you need a very high-level understanding of engineering, and if you don't have that, you will fall for any kind of pseudo-technological scam, which is, the crypto industry is full of that. Then you need revolutionaries. If you approach Bitcoin just as a technology, you will really miss its significance and you will not understand what people are doing. If the only point is just to make cool software, to make cool, there is this meme, right, which is the Indian guy with the golden chain, I'm in for the technology. And the meme is funny because the guy is obviously in for the money, but even being in for the technology itself, so there is a meta meme, even the guy making fun of the guy who is not there for the technology, he doesn't understand Bitcoin as well, because Bitcoin is not a technology. The technology is just functional to the aim of Bitcoin. And the aim is highly political in a sense. It's apolitical because it's non-partisan, but it's political in the sense that it's going to separate the politics from money from state, and so money from politics. So it is highly political, and you need to understand revolutionaries in order to understand Bitcoin. Otherwise, you don't understand why most developers do what they do, why most of the activists of Bitcoin educators do what they do. They are not really just playing around with the technology. They are on a mission. They are on a crusade. It's more than that. And then you have to understand speculators. And I don't mean that just in the sense of, degenerate gamblers. Oh, I don't know if I can say that in Las Vegas. I mean, gamblers. And I also mean that in a very noble sense of Mises, of Ludwig von Mises. Everybody's a speculator. Everybody is going to actually speculate on the future, trying to give up some scarce resources in exchange for other scarce resources with opportunity cost calculation. So everybody is literally a speculator. People actually pump and dumping shitcoins is a little bit more speculative than others, but everybody is a speculator. And you don't understand Bitcoin if you completely ignore the economical incentives and the financial incentives. For example, if you are just an engineer, you may say, okay, now we have side chains, so you people can just stop printing shitcoins. I mean, it's useless at the point. From a technological point of view, your technological goal can be satisfied in Bitcoin only, so just stop printing shitcoins. And they won't stop. Why? Because there is an whole other point to understand, which is the point of speculation, the point of economic incentives. Bitcoin will not be where it is if not for the number go up meme, if not for the money. So many people are entering for the gambling and staying for the revolution or for the technological advancement. So it is a gateway for people, the speculation, and it is important. You cannot really ignore the price. You can pretend the price is not important. Price is really important. Otherwise, Bitcoin will not be where it is. So this is what you need to know in order to understand. And we were discussing with Alex that you need to be at the very center of this triangle in order to really get the totality of Bitcoin. You may not be deep into any of these fields, but you need to get a little bit of all of them. So the funny thing is that if you analyze the cultural roots of Bitcoin, so the origins of Bitcoin, the subcultures that generated Bitcoin, that actually played a role in Bitcoin development, you will understand that the culture were not really dividing themselves in this clean way, in these circles, but they were actually coming from the intersection. The very first culture which actually worked on Bitcoin we call them the cypherpunks. These people in the 90s, they were all about privacy, privacy on speech, of transaction, private communication over the internet. Julian Assange was one of them. Adam Beck was one of them. They were cool people. They were revolutionaries. Their purpose was not purely technical. They were not just playing around with cool tech. They were actually trying to organize a social revolution. The whole point was what is called crypto-anarchism, which is basically, we cannot really achieve anarchism right now because the state has guns and we have not, but when we are online, we can achieve a level of privacy that can make difficult and expensive for the state to hurt us for what we do. So we can achieve some kind of freedom inside the cyberspace, even if we don't have that kind of freedom outside the cyberspace. So cypherpunk ideology and crypto-anarchism and stuff like that. So after Satoshi, we don't know who they were or he was, but we know that most likely he were part of the cypherpunk cultural environment. But then you had basically a handover, then you started to have engineers. They may not really share a lot of the political motives, but maybe some engineers that were coming from Google. You remember the guy who caused the 2013 chain split, Mike Hearn. He was coming from Google. It was a Silicon Valley type. Then he went back to the fiat world, which is where he belonged. But for a moment, Bitcoin was developed by people that were coming from this other subculture that I would call it the culture of the disruptors. They are the typical Silicon Valley type. Alex mentioned them. They are the guys that they drink Soylent, they disrupt the world, they create the new cool software, they pitch their startup to you in the elevator, even if you want to get out. They are this kind of people. I mean, it's good because we need them as well. Without the business model, you don't have incentives to play around. So having startuppers in Bitcoin is good. But it's also cringe-worthy sometimes. As like I remember in 2013, 2014, it was full of these people coming to pitch the new blockchain startup. So it is a little bit cringe, but it's also useful for the overall result. And then after, so Bitcoin started as a revolution. Then it progressed as a cool technology to disrupt the banking system. And then people started to reconsider seriously the Austrian perspective. So what is money? What is scarcity? What is time preference? And then you have Saifedian with the Bitcoin Standard Book, and everybody is discussing these topics and store of value and saving and basically storing my time and time preference and stuff like that. So this is not really something which, there is this narrative that this stuff arrived in Bitcoin later on. This is not correct. Even inside the cypherpunk movement, there was people like Nick Szabo actually thinking about this very discussion, these very topics about how is money being selected from society based on durability, on scarcity, on unforgeable costliness and stuff like that. So there was a lot of Austrian debate at the beginning of Bitcoin, but it came out mainstream later. Even here, like on this stage, Saifedian was speaking about these topics a few years ago, and that was very important for Bitcoin as well. And still, you cannot really forget the other parts in order to understand the full picture. So it's a real complex interplay of different topics. What is interesting is that this subdivision, which is the subdivision of the original ancient subcultures merging into the Bitcoin culture, is also right now somehow visible in the division of meme tribes. If you go, for example, on Twitter and you check out what we do mostly on Twitter, which is just Twitter fights among Bitcoiners. So we just fight. So this man is wrong on the internet and I have to stay awake all tonight to fight with him. That's what we do, basically. And if you actually analyze the topics of discussion, the reasons for our wars, you will find that there are some tribes in Bitcoin today, and these tribes are still basically, kind of, with some exception, at the intersection of these circles. So one tribe is the NGU tribe. So it's the number go up. So just like following the Austrian economic school consideration, they focus on price. They focus on central bank adoption, nation-state adoption. They focus on halving cycles. They focus on store of value. They focus on HODL. They will use memes like HODL, and they will say to the moon, and they will put on laser eyes. And they will also, I mean, some of them are anarchists, like I am, but they will also tolerate a head of state if the head of state has laser eyes, like Nayib Bukele. So, I mean, you're not perfect, you're still a politician. I hate you, but I also love you because you have laser eyes. So there is some level of tolerance. Then you have the other guys that are like, these are hardcore street breeding Bitcoiners, and I would like to call them, just to use an acronym, the no KYC guys. This is also very important for Bitcoin. You know, KYC, know your customer, is absolute economic illiteracy. It's basically ignorance. So the point of money is that you don't have to know your customer. If you own a bookshop, the point of money is that the client, the customer, has to know that you have good books in order to come to buy books from you. So he has to know you. Even if you give them the book, they have to know that it's not actually just a brick covered as a book. They have to trust the vendor. But the vendor cannot trust any single customer. Otherwise, the business could not scale. The whole point of money is that the vendor should not know his customer. So every time you hear about KYC, you know that you're speaking with absolutely ignorant people about any kind of economic interaction. Knowing your customer is exactly the antithesis of the idea of money. So there is a lot of people that is very actively fighting against this idea of buying Bitcoin on KYC solutions and leave your private information inside the list that get transmitted across tons of chain analysis companies and government agency. So you remember when, this is just a little bit off topic, but you remember where people started to freak out because they were buying Ledger devices, and the list of Ledger customers, it leaked. And so now some people, some bad people, they had the list with your address, maybe home address, delivery address anyway, and the fact that you just had another wallet. That was enough to get people into problems with phishing attacks, some other people with blackmailing attacks, and even some few, luckily, physical attacks. So if a list just containing your address and the fact that you bought another wallet is dangerous, imagine a list which contains your name, full name, legal up-to-date document, and verified home residency, and address of withdrawal, and exact amount of withdrawal. And that gets shared not just by one company, like Ledger, but it gets shared across different state agencies, and eventually it finds its way to the dark web and to everywhere, basically. So KYC sucks. KYC is actually a huge danger for your personal security. And these people, they like to remind it to you, and they are the people that actually were very focused about on darknet market. They are all about free ROS, and they were users of the Silk Road. I was a user of the Silk Road just for research purposes, of course. And this is important. I mean, this is a whole side of internet privacy. These guys, they are different. They have different memes. They don't like laser eyes. They don't like. Well, not all of them. Of course, there is an intersection, right? I may be at the center and be part of both, and I consider myself part of both. But most of these guys, if they are outside of the center, they will not like laser eyes or moons. They will dress up as samurais for some reason. They will use these katanas, and they will talk about all these samurai terms. And they will also, the typical guys that they will, the actually guy. Like, I mean, actually, you don't really own Bitcoin if you just keep them on an exchange. Okay, sure, let me keep it out to my address. Actually, if you don't run a node, you're just trusting somebody else with your privacy, so you should run a node. Okay, yeah, let's just maybe buy an embassy from Star9 Labs. Actually, if you don't really compile the code yourself, I mean, they could just give you any kind of backdoor inside that embassy, which is, I mean, it's true, it's okay. So let me compile everything from scratch. And then you get Luke Dasher, which actually the compiler of Rust is not compiling Rust itself, so it could be backdoor by the NSA. So that's true. So eventually you end up mining silicium directly from the ground to build your chips, and that's what basically where you end, which is fine. I mean, it's always a trade-off between UX and security, right? So if you want to mine from the earth your metal to build your computer, you can. And then you have the intersection of the people just discussing DeFi. You may think that all these people are just shitcoiners, but that's not the case. There are some legit Bitcoiners interested in advancing strange, crazy, complex functionalities on top of Bitcoin. We were discussing a little bit in the previous panel about, I mean, like Justin was saying, something which I agree with, kind of, that monetary functions are basically enough, and they are very important. And if you get them right, you don't need a lot of the other stuff around. But still, there is a lot of people which was fascinated by the idea of having DeFi and DLC contracts with oracles and DEXs and Lightning Network Layer 3 and Sphinx Chat on top of Lightning and all these other kind of things, which can be done in a scammy way, or also in a serious way. So this is the thing. So I told you that it's not all about shitcoins, the DeFi, but that's true for all of these intersection. There are some part of this chart that tend to be more shitcoin friendly. Mostly, you will have basically these two intersections. The no KYC the tribe, they tend to to answer any question about privacy with just use Monero. You know them, right? You can see them in chats. There are many. Actually, they're not that many, but they use a lot of Telegram and Twitter accounts. And they come on this chat, and you say like, I don't know, this guy consolidated addresses after CoinJoin, so you could de-anonymize him. And they answer Justice Monero. And I think this is becoming very noisy and very problematic for this different reason, but we will discuss that. And then on the DeFi side, of course, you have the king of shitcoins, Ethereum, where the mother of all shitcoins. And there's a lot of, there is a lot of discussion about Bitcoin cannot do these. Right now, every Ethereum guy using MetaMask was just shut down by Infura if they were from the wrong country. But still, you can do Turing complete stuff. So it's okay. Then you also have like many libertarians, like in the Pork Fest, they like Bcash for some reason, probably historical because of Roger Ver and stuff. So many people who are very libertarian, they are in the Bcash scam. And of course, then you have the pure speculators. This guy here, they don't give a fuck about anything. They just want money. And so, dogs, cats, I don't care. I just want to buy, pump, and dump, and that's all I care for. Which, it tends to drive them to shitcoinery. These guys, the Austrian guys, so these guys here, these are basically the pure engineers. They only care for tech, and they may fall for especially academic scams. For example, the Algorand scam, and usually they will talk about blockchains. This part, the Austrians, they are kind of okay, even if I would argue that a strictly KYC only Bitcoin is actually a shitcoin. This is basically a discussion about protocol. So your Bitcoin protocol, your Bitcoin node, follows certain rules. And the rule is if you receive a valid Bitcoin transaction following the protocol, the transaction is valid and you should accept it. And you should broadcast it. And that's the rule of Bitcoin. If you insert any additional rule which restricts the space of valid transaction, you are soft forking away from Bitcoin consensus. You're creating a soft fork, and if you are the only one creating the soft fork, you are basically moving to a shitcoin. So if you don't use your valid Bitcoin node to validate transaction, but if you are imposing an additional layer of rules, like you have to reject transactions which are not coming from some list approved by some government, you are actually soft forking away from Bitcoin consensus into a shitcoin. So they are shitcoiners as well. Some of these people, I block them on Twitter because they are shitcoiners, but that doesn't mean that all the people that are not shitcoiner don't get blocked by me on Twitter, because you can also get blocked if you are too statist for me. And where is this getting, basically? So people were just about, so we discussed this, people that were just about engineering and science, even good engineer, they tend to be okay with any form of tyranny if it's justified by scientific purposes. So, I want to basically enslave you. No, that's bad, that's very backwards. But I want to enslave you for science. Oh, please govern me harder, daddy. So this is a tendency in Bitcoin as well, and especially in the engineer camp. Also, engineers tend to be fine with lockdowns because they didn't have a social life anyway, so it's easy for them. So it's not true that any engineers is libertarian. Many of them are pretty statist with the right kind of statism. And then you have revolutionaries. I say that they are revolutionaries. I say that they are activists. They are politically involved. They want to liberate the humankind, but not always with a very consistent political theory about defense of property right and individual freedom. So some of them may tend to be a little bit dare I say, communist in their misconception of what freedom is and individual rights are. So you can find these kind of guys in the very active political spectrum of Bitcoin or shitcoins or crypto or whatever. And then you have, of course, the compliance guys. These guys, again, they only care for money, so they don't want any kind of inconvenience. They don't want to be inconvenienced in any way. Just regulate me, KYC me, tax me, as long as you let me making money. I don't care about freedom, I don't care about free speech, I don't care about individual rights, property. As long as you allow me to get richer, you can do whatever you want to me or to others. And so these are basically the three tendencies of statism. Cypherpunks, or at least original cypherpunks, or no KYC ninjas, they tend to be better in this regard. They are often shitcoiners, but they are at least not very often statists. So that's actually good. There are three kinds of struggle between these intersections. One is the struggle between a number go up tribe and the DeFi tribe. And usually this fight is about changing Bitcoin. So the number go up tribe, they don't want to add complexity. They don't want to add cool features. They just want to preserve what is working. So just keep Bitcoin working. I don't care for, so I have a good friend who is present in this room, and I will not name names, but this guy is a major respected Bitcoin entrepreneur, and he told me yesterday night that Lightning Network is a shitcoin for him. So this guy is a typical example of somebody who doesn't want crazy stuff on Bitcoin for the sake of it. While there are, so the struggle is let's add cool features and let's keep Bitcoin just money and doing what it does in a perfect way. You may think that in the DeFi camp there may be just evil people, but that's not the case. Like if you talk with super respected cypherpunks like Adam Beck, Adam will actually push for simplicity language in order to do any kind of smart contracts on Bitcoin. So there are good Bitcoin engineers and cypherpunks that actually want to change Bitcoin in very complex ways because they are just more interested in evolution than they are in stability or other kind of things. The second struggle is DeFi versus non-KYC. This is usually a struggle between convenience and UX and security and hardcore security. So just give me my easy. So the DeFi guy will just want adoption. So how can this scale to billions of people? We have to make it simpler. We have to make it easier. We have to make it nicer. And the other guy will say, no, fuck this. You actually have to compile the code from source. And that's the struggle. But then I would like to spend a few minutes on this, which is probably the most important struggle, the struggle where even my friends right now are sometimes fighting on things that I think should not be controversial. And I think both reasons are very important, and we should actually consider them as a whole. And this is basically the no KYC tribe against the number go up tribe. So you will have typically the no KYC guy reminding you the importance of privacy and censorship resistance, and the NGO will just remind you the importance of basically sound economics and institutional adoption and hardest money eating up the softer monies and stuff like that. And this is very important to me because I think they are the two faces of the same coin. If you don't have privacy, eventually you cannot have Bitcoin. Why? Because if the system, if the governments of the world, if the regulatory framework of the world can actually force you to change your Bitcoin consensus into censoring non-KYC transactions or non-whitelisted transaction, then with the same kind of power, it can also force your node to adopt a hard fork changing the 21 million limits. So there is not a scenario in which you change Bitcoin to accommodate for KYC, so they win, and then they don't come after you to ask you to accommodate them for 21 million limit as well. If you introduce KYC, you will be asked to introduce inflation as well. If the State Department of the USA is going to control your UTXO set for terrorists, then the Fed is eventually going to control your UTXO set for monetary policy when you will be threatening the monetary policy. So there is no way you can have a Bitcoin which is which is regulated and still inflation resistant. Bitcoin is inflation resistant because it is unregulated. Otherwise, you get back to e-gold, which was inflation resistant because it was gold, but then it was just shut down by the government because it was not private and not censorship resistant. So privacy is important. But on the other way, if you don't have sound economics, your privacy coin is just useless. It's worse than useless. It's harmful for people seeking privacy. Why? Because in order to have privacy, you need liquidity. If you have the best privacy tech in the world, but you are the only one using it, you have no privacy. If you have a privacy tech which is less perfect, but it has a large anonymity set, because a lot of people are using it, you have more privacy that using a technology which has a lot of cool features, but cannot be used by more than 10 people. So there is a balance there, and liquidity follows liquidity. So if you have hardest money, Bitcoin will basically eat off the liquidity from the softer money, which is your privacy shitcoin, and your privacy shitcoin will end up to be less private than Bitcoin. Right now, so there are people that say, let's just save Bitcoin, and when I have to pay for my weed, I will use Monero. So what you're doing is, you are saving Bitcoin, then you are sending a transaction from your cold storage to an exchange using Bitcoin anonymity set, which is trackable and whatever. Then you will enter an order book of the exchange, which a very small liquidity, very few people exchanging, so that will be a huge privacy bottleneck, reducing your privacy. Then you will enter a Monero transaction, which even if it has very cool tech, like signature, like a ring signature and confidential transaction, still has usually a lower anonymity set than the typical Bitcoin conjoin. And then the other counterparty will have to do the other way around. So overall, you will reduce your anonymity than just fucking sending Bitcoin immediately without any further ado. Maybe not connecting your IP with an external node and stuff like that. So this struggle is very important. I think that both camps have very good arguments, and I think that they are both right, and they are also both wrong if they don't understand the other side. We literally need both. We need hard money, and we need dark money. Money is not really dark if it's not hard, and the other way around. So, other famous topic, and I'm about to close, just 1 second. So what about eating meat? This is mostly on the Austrian. I noticed that most Austrian people eat meat. And what about guns? It's mostly the no KYC people loving guns. I love both. And I'm not sure where to place poker, actually. So I just place it like that for symmetry, but I'm not sure about that. And the last slide is famous example. So you have, for example, Ragnar is a good guy, but now he's a shitcoiner because it's too far into the no KYC camp. So now he's a shitcoiner. While, for example, you have Matt Oder, who is actually it's not well. Anyway, you have good people that are still Bitcoiners while caring for privacy a lot. At the same time, you have people like Saifedian emphasizing the hard money part a lot, but then you have like Michael Saylor saying that KYC is good, which is not. KYC is bad. KYC is a shitcoin. And then you have people like Eric Wall. I mean, Eric is a friend, but now he's a shitcoiner because he was too much into that field. And then you have Adam Beck promoting a lot of different evolution of Bitcoin. Of course, you can also have perfection. You can have absolute total balance. And I don't know who could be that perfect, but somewhere there is some guy like that. Thank you.